ABC and ABC iView.
Tonight, reports that Russia wants to base military planes just to our north, but Indonesia assures Australia that won't happen. Hello, I'm Amy Greenbank. This is ABC News. Both leaders spruik their housing policies as they try to woo voters. The search for a killer. A grandmother shot dead in a targeted drive-by shooting in Sydney's southwest. And flying high, pop star Katy Perry joins 5 other women in space for a headline-grabbing flight. Australia's Defence Minister says he's been given an ironclad assurance that reports of Russia trying to operate aircraft out of Indonesia are untrue. The explosive claims surfaced on a US military website, saying Moscow had launched an official request to base aircraft in an Indonesia province, less than 1,400 kilometres north of Darwin. The concerns were seized upon by the opposition on the campaign trail as Australian officials scrambled to verify the information.
Indonesia and Russia flex their military might in a joint naval training exercise in the Java Sea just months ago. Now their military ties could be closer than ever, with reports Russia wants to establish a base for long-range aircraft in the Indonesian region of Papua, at the Manuhua Air Force Base at Biak Numfor 4.
We obviously do not want to see Russian influence in our region. We regard Vladimir Putin as an authoritarian leader who has broken international law.
The reports surfaced on a US military website, Jane's, late today, sending the Australian government scrambling for information, and was seized upon by the opposition leader on the campaign trail.
The question here is whether or not the government had any forewarning. This would be a catastrophic error in the government systems if the DFAT under Penny Wong didn't know anything about it.
As Australian officials scrambled to verify the reports, the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, took the concerns to his Indonesian counterpart, saying he had received an ironclad guarantee that the prospect of Russian planes in Indonesia was simply not true.
We are seeing increasing cooperation between Australia and Indonesia at a defence level, and I expect all of that to continue.
My message to President Putin is that he's not welcome in our neighbourhood.
The Australian government believes both Russia and China are increasingly focused on the growing US military presence in Darwin and the Northern Territory.
If the Russian request is real, few in Jakarta know about it. Spokesman for both Indonesia's Defence Ministry and Foreign Affairs Ministry told the ABC they're unaware of it. The Russian embassy declined to respond to our questions. But the reports have caused a stir, with a very senior member of Indonesia's political opposition saying no foreign power should ever have a military base here. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Jakarta.
For his analysis on the reports that Moscow has requested to base aircraft in Indonesia, here's Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts.
It's not surprising to see Jakarta move quickly to nip this story in the bud. Indonesia has long prized its foreign policy independence and typically avoids doing anything that risks antagonising the larger powers. We still don't know exactly what was or wasn't brought up by Russia. Diplomatic sources say even if this wasn't raised directly with the defence minister in Indonesia, it could well have been brought up by more junior players. Either way, allowing Russia to base surveillance aircraft and potentially long-range bombers in Indonesia, where it would be easier for them to monitor and potentially even hit US and Australian military assets, seems to have been a red line which Jakarta does not want to cross.
The election campaign has reached the official halfway mark, and the contest over housing affordability is heating up. Both leaders blitzed Melbourne seats today, visiting housing estates and construction sites as they try and convince younger voters to back their plans to get them into the housing market. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
His path to victory cuts through the outer suburbs.
Pleasure, mate. How are you? Very good.
In mortgage belt seats where this election will likely be decided. The Prime Minister made a pit stop in Melbourne's inner suburbs, under pressure to show his housing policies are bearing fruit.
So people will be moving in pretty soon, obviously.
Promising billions to build many more.
Just part of our $43 billion Homes for Australia plan.
On the hustings with son Harry in Labor-held Hawke, Peter Dutton's accusing Labor of killing the dream of home ownership, confirming what he wouldn't yesterday, that the reality for his kids will be help from the bank of mum and dad.
We'll help them with the deposit at some stage, and the Prime Minister and I might be able to help our kids, but it's not about us.
As the campaign enters its third week, housing affordability is firmly in focus, and it's not hard to see why. In the past decade, median house prices have soared 63% to over $900,000 across capital cities. In regional areas, they're up 86%, sitting around $666,000.
Don't tell Toto.
The Prime Minister brushing off concerns his policies will see prices go up even further.
I'm not saying that house prices will rise.
But he won't release the Treasury advice underpinning that assertion.
The Treasury advice says that price rise won't be significant.
No, we don't release Treasury documentation.
The Coalition's plans are focused on making it easier for young people to get into a home.
We want to make sure that house prices increase.
Over in the West, Peter Dutton's confronting a Coalition candidate unloading.
Good policy deserves support.
Mia Davies, the Nationals candidate for the brand new seat of Bullwinkle, is strongly backing plans for critical minerals production tax credits. The only problem is it's a Labor policy, derided by the Liberals as billions for billionaires.
I'm disappointed that we weren't backing the West Australian resource sector on this front.
Drawing a sharp response from the Liberal leader, now publicly endorsing her Liberal opponent.
Matt Moran's doing a fantastic job in Bullwinkle, and I believe he'll be elected as the next member.
While Peter Dutton is dealing with divisions over policy, Anthony Albanese is playing down any talk of disunity. After an awkward encounter at Sunday's campaign launch, the Prime Minister denies there's any bad blood between he and Tanya Plibersek, confirming she'll remain in Cabinet if Labor wins a second term. The portfolio up for debate. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
And tomorrow night, the leaders will be holding their first debate of the campaign on free-to-air television, moderated by David Spears, right here at the ABC's Parramatta studios. You can catch that at 8 p.m. on ABC TV and on ABC iView. Sydney police are on the hunt for 3 men involved in a drive-by shooting last night. A 65-year-old woman was killed in her Ambervale home in the city's southwest. Detectives say they're not sure if the grandmother or someone else at the house was the intended target.
A home peppered with bullet holes. Inside, the body of a grandmother killed in the attack.
It's just devastating.
A Dickens Street resident recalls the moment of horror around 11 p.m.
I heard the gunshots. It was a very crisp sound. It was a clear night, so it was a very crisp sound.
Police say 3 people stepped out of a vehicle and fired several shots into the property behind me before fleeing the scene in what they described as a dark-coloured sedan.
Upon police arrival, they found the lady had been shot in the leg. She was treated at the scene by police and ambulance, however she passed away.
Despite the family being known to police, it's still unclear whether the 65-year-old was the intended target.
There was a 34-year-old man in the house and a 21-year-old woman at the time, and we're investigating all 3 of them.
Among neighbours, there's a growing sense of concern.
It seems to be more frequently happening, and it is worrying when you've got a family, obviously.
The family was new to the area, having only moved in around 6 weeks ago.
As often as stuff is happening, it's still shocking and it's confronting. And to know that an elderly woman has passed away, it's just devastating.
Police are calling on anyone with CCTV footage to get in touch. Digby Worthmoller, ABC News, Sydney.
A New South Wales police constable accused of raping a woman in Sydney's south has faced court for the first time. Police allege Jayden Turk assaulted a woman at a home in Cronulla in September 2023. 18 months later, police arrested the 25-year-old, who had not been on active duty since November 2023. He's been charged with 2 counts of sexual intercourse without consent. His employment status is under review and he will face court again in July. Police divers have recovered the body of an 86-year-old man after his car plunged into the Parramatta River on Sydney's North Shore yesterday. Witnesses say the vehicle accelerated through the car park at Greenwich Sailing Club before striking the man's 74-year-old wife, knocking her into the water. The car then smashed through a fence and landed in the river. Police said a passerby rescued the woman but was unable to remove the man from the car. The woman was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The vehicle was recovered from the river this afternoon.
They were a husband and wife and have been coming here every day fishing for a number of years, both a retired couple, so it's quite a distressing incident and quite tragic.
A new report says it's never been more difficult to obtain home insurance in Australia after a series of natural disasters in recent years. The Climate Council says 80 suburbs across the country are now deemed critical risk zones. Among the electorates with the most high risk is in the Hunter and the Richmond region in the state's north. And it's urged authorities to work with insurance companies to find answers.
As Vicky and Jeff Woodhouse survey the block where their family home once stood, they think back in amazement to the scale of the floods that hit Shepparton in 2022.
We did not think that the house would be inundated with water to the extent that it was.
They were initially told by their insurance company they'd need to rebuild their property like for like, but they knew that would leave them unable to insure the new house.
To me, logically, why would you refit our home at the current floor level, which is setting me up to flood again?
Shepparton is the most at-risk suburb in Australia, with almost 90% of its properties considered uninsurable.
What we do in Shepparton, how we solve this, can be a blueprint for how we're going to solve this in hundreds of suburbs around Australia. But if we don't solve it, it will also be a blueprint of what demise looks like.
Climate risk analysis shows more than 80 suburbs around Australia are now critical risk zones, where more than 80% of properties are considered to be at high risk of climate-related damage. Getting insurance in Shepparton is now almost impossible.
We're seeing $30,000 a year increases, which is completely unrealistic.
But experts say blaming the insurance companies doesn't solve the problem.
Forcing the insurers to do things which are commercial suicide is not a solution.
They want insurers, banks and the government to work together to future-proof flood-prone communities.
If we are faced with flood events like we've experienced in 22, it'll be those same 700, 800, 900 houses that will be impacted again. We want to make sure that they can build back better.
Vicky and Jeff Woodhouse eventually negotiated a financial settlement and relocated.
We decided that it was all too much to build a new home and it was time to move on.
Drastic measures for a growing problem. Callum Marshall, ABC News, Shepparton.
Coming up on 7:30, the community group taking legal action after forever chemicals were found in their water supply.
We had zero awareness that there were issues with our water.
We don't know how much was in the drinking water or for how long.
I got tested for the levels of PFAS in my blood, and what concerned me was how high that was.
We want to make sure that people can absolutely trust their drinking water, and they can.
A new Israeli proposal for a Gaza ceasefire has been presented to Hamas, but it's likely to be rejected. The deal is said to involve a 45-day pause in Israel's bombardment of Gaza in exchange for Hamas releasing at least 10 of the remaining 59 Israeli hostages still being held by the group. But a Hamas official has told Al Jazeera the deal presented by Egyptian mediators had a number of catches, including the demand that it disarm. Hamas says efforts to force it to lay down its weapons before Israel commits to ending the war gives the Netanyahu government a way to keep fighting in Gaza. 5 months after the fall of dictator President Bashar al-Assad, violence is continuing in Syria as the new government grapples to secure control. New security forces have been conducting raids across the country, trying to root out those loyal to the old regime. ABC correspondent Stephanie March got access to one of those operations and has this report from Damascus.
A Damascus suburb sealed off by Syria's new security forces. They're hunting for Assad regime loyalists. They say they've caught one. The detainee is hooded and held in the back seat. Armed, they say, with this.
فقمنا باكتشاف عدد من فلول النظام وقمنا بملاحقتهم وتفتيش بيوتهم وتم إلقاء القبض عليهم والآن جاري التمشيط على هذه المنطقة.
Another car, more weapons.
This is grenades?
Grenades. Rooting out loyalists to the former regime is one challenge for Syria's new rulers. So too is improving their own international reputation. The coalition of rebel militias that overthrew dictator Bashar al-Assad in December were led by a former al-Qaeda commander who's now Syria's new president, Ahmad al-Shara, and his militia, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is still listed as a terrorist organisation.
The economy is suffocating because of the sanctions and the terrorist listing. Our government is listed as a terrorist organisation, so no foreign entity can deal with it.
Getting access to foreign capital is vital to rebuilding after 13 years of civil war. There's a fuel crisis, a couple of hours of power a day, and a lack of physical banknotes.
This is a problem for all Syrian citizens. They have money in the bank, but they cannot withdraw it with cash. They put restrictions.
But making the transition from terrorist to trusted global citizen is no easy task. Stephanie March, ABC News, Damascus.
El Salvador's president says he has no plans to return a man who was wrongly deported to his notorious mega prison by the Trump administration. The Supreme Court has ruled the US government must facilitate the return of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who lived in Maryland with his family. But at a meeting with Donald Trump in Washington, President Nayib Bukele says he doesn't have the power to send him back.
A warm White House welcome for the self-described world's coolest dictator. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has become central to President Trump's deportation blitz, accepting scores of alleged Venezuelan gang members into his notorious mega prison.
I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please?
He's also at the centre of a legal standoff over a man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador after what the US government admits was an administrative error.
President Trump, bring Kilmer home now.
The family of Kilmer Abrego Garcia joining a vigil with faith leaders to call for his return.
What we're asking them to do is what we would ask anyone to do. So if you made a mistake, you own up to it.
As many as we can.
The Trump administration says they're not required to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia back, despite the Supreme Court ordering they facilitate his return.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Do you plan to return him?
The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Lawyers for Kilmer Abrego Garcia say he's never been charged or convicted of a crime, and they're worried about his safety inside the controversial mega prison.
President Bukele, we call upon you to respect the human rights and the fundamental human dignity of Kilmer.
It's not just immigrants Donald Trump wants to deport. He's also floated the idea of sending US citizens who commit violent crimes to El Salvador prisons. A proposal seen by many legal experts as unconstitutional, but one that would further cement the relationship between the two leaders. Lauren Day, ABC News, Washington.
What a wonderful world. That was the song Katy Perry serenaded her fellow travellers with as an all-female team took a brief trip on a rocket owned by Jeff Bezos. Alongside the famous singer, a well-known journalist, a scientist and an activist were on board. But did the trip push boundaries or was it just a celebrity stunt?
2, 1, ignition.
Liftoff for a group of 6 women, including a pop star, a TV presenter and a scientist.
1, 2, 3, taking up space!
The highly publicised voyage of the Blue Origin rocket lasted just 10 minutes.
Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon.
And then it was back to Earth. First out, the fiancé of the billionaire who owns the rocket, Jeff Bezos. Then singer Katy Perry, who gave the trip 5 stars.
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love.
Watching the spectacle, another celebrity.
There's only one time that all the women are going up for the first time. Right. You know, there will be other trips, but there's only one first time. Incredible. So to be a pioneer is great.
But not everyone was convinced the trip represented a giant leap forward for womankind.
How many resources went into putting these women into space? I'm disgusted, literally. I'm disgusted.
It's a stunt, but the strong message here is that space is for women. And whatever the reasons, whoever these women were, that message still comes across for me.
We weren't just taking up space, we were making space for the future.
A debate sure to run to infinity and beyond. Barbara Miller, ABC News.
To Finance Now, here's senior business correspondent Ian Verinder.
Forget that old saying that the house always wins. Casino group Star Entertainment finally revealed its results today, months after the deadline, and they were even worse than expected, a $300 million half-year loss. What went wrong? Well, pretty much everything. But against all odds, it's been bailed out by US casino operator Bally's after months fighting off insolvency. Star shares have been suspended for 6 weeks, last trading at just 11 cents, so the Americans have certainly picked the bottom. Meanwhile, the local market backed up yesterday's gains with another bank-led advance, but struggled to gain momentum. US President Donald Trump's threats to hit pharmaceutical companies with tariffs didn't dent CSL's performance today, while rare earths miners were in demand after China shut the door on US supplies over the weekend. Global stocks were mostly higher after a solid bounce on Wall Street, and commodities caught a break with oil, gold and iron ore all advancing. But it's the little Aussie battler that's emerged a hero, up almost 7% in a week, and back to where it was against the greenback before Donald Trump's Liberation Day. Mostly, it's because the US dollar is sinking. Speaking of Donald Trump, at least one thing is working to plan. His America First policy is essentially a strategy to isolate the US. If tourist arrivals are anything to go by, it's been a roaring success. The number of Australians heading to the land of the free are in free fall, down 7% in a year. But the Europeans are putting us to shame. Apart from Icelanders, almost every country on the continent has shunned America ever since the Trump inauguration, with arrivals down between 15 and 30%. And that's finance.
Port Adelaide player Willie Rioli has taken personal leave to deal with racist and homophobic comments made on social media. The comments were made following a post from Rioli on Instagram after Port Adelaide's fiery win over Hawthorn. Rioli stated his hatred for the Hawks comes from how they treated his father and brother. The AFL Players Association says racist and homophobic comments are unacceptable. Teammates are publicly backing the premiership forward, and the Power says he'll be on leave for as long as he needs. Rising star Lachlan Galvin has been axed by the Wests Tigers after he rejected a new contract to stay at the NRL club. The Tigers are disappointed that the 19-year-old didn't consider their offer and have named him in reserve grade.
Lachlan Galvin, probably the most talked about teenager in the NRL.
The talented 19-year-old was given his big chance by Benji Marshall and the Wests Tigers.
Galvin's leading the chase. Now we've got something spectacular.
They've tried to avoid a repeat of 8 years ago when junior product James Tedesco left the club for a decorated career at the Roosters.
I'm sure there'll be lots of teams interested in Galvin. He's a classy kid.
A day after a solid win over Newcastle, Galvin told the Tigers he'll be leaving when his contract runs out at the end of 2026, knocking back a multi-million-dollar offer.
He now has to be celebrated, cheered or booed by Tigers fans. It's round 7 this week for all of this year, then all of next year at the Tigers.
The Tigers have reacted by dropping Galvin. He won't play in Monday's game with the Eels.
I was in a similar position at 21 and money gets thrown around. It's tough.
Tedesco says his club, the Roosters, are moving on from last week's heated sideline exchange between their prop Spencer Leniu and NRL legend Jonathan Thurston.
Put it to bed, those two sorted out, and then we can sort of move on with our big game this week and enjoy the win that we had on Brisbane on Friday.
The four-time Dally M medalist and commentator offered to meet privately with Leniu and the Roosters over the incidents at Lang Park. It stemmed from comments Thurston made last year, calling for a lengthy ban for Leniu after his racial slur towards Broncos player Ezra Mam in Las Vegas. Bindi Bryce, ABC News.
A letter from the King congratulating a Queenslander on her 100th birthday has finally been delivered after it turned up at the wrong address. Sunshine Coast great-great-grandmother Thelma Petty turned 100 in March and thought her message would never arrive. The royal note was mistakenly sent to a resident of another suburb. After the recipient asked ABC Radio to put out the call for the rightful owner, a friend of the centenarian heard the appeal and helped redirect the letter.
I was happy about it because we've been through all of this with my mother. So I knew that I probably would receive a letter and that it would arrive eventually.
Let's take a look at the weather. And Tom, drought is starting to emerge in the state's south.
Amy, widespread rainfall deficits of 100 to 400 millimetres have accumulated across southern Australia during the past 12 months. Now, the country's south relies on cold fronts and winter lows for the majority of its precipitation. But with the storm tracks shifting south towards Antarctica, rainfall has been well below average. Adelaide has only picked up 285 millimetres through the past year. That's only 1/5 of the rain Sydney has received. This map shows the rain deciles for the past 12 months to April. Totals have been the lowest on record for many agricultural parts of South Australia, but also below normal for the southern inland of New South Wales. And that's caused a gradual increase in drought. The latest figures from the Department of Primary Industries estimate 18.5% of our state is now in a drought category. That's up from 9% last spring. The most severe drought is in the area around Cootamundra, Gundagai and Batlow. Now, it's been much wetter along the coast, and Sydney was splashed by a few showers today thanks to fresh southerly winds off the Tasman. The top fall to 9 a.m. was 16 millimetres at Cronulla. We worked to a low of above 17. That was 3 up on the average. The southerlies then held the high to 23, which is near normal. Bellambi reached 22 and Bankstown 24. Overnight minimums across the state were as much as 8 above average, 16 in Mudgee, and today's maximums were also up to 8 above. Hay and Deniliquin recorded their 5th consecutive days above 30. On the satellite, well, we can see the low cloud that's being driven up the coastline. Yamba has collected 30 millimetres since 9 a.m. On the chart tomorrow, a tropical cyclone should form off the Kimberley coast, while onshore winds bring further showers to our coastline. Around the country, still very warm for mid-autumn in Adelaide, heading for 32, a cool night and a mostly sunny day in Canberra. For the northeast, there's a high chance of showers on the Hunter coast, a slight to medium chance of showers for the remainder of the coast, staying mostly sunny along the ranges, a top of 20 in Glen Innes and 19 in Armidale. For the southeast, medium chance of showers for the Illawarra coastline, a cool night, then a mostly sunny day elsewhere, heading for 21 in Bega and Goulburn. To the west, mostly sunny with daytime temperatures still above average, from 24 in Gunnedah and Mudgee to around 30 across the far west. On the waters, strong winds to continue off the northern coast with seas up to 2.5 metres, 15 to 25 knot winds for the south. Now for Sydney, partly cloudy. The Bureau predict a high chance of showers on the coastal fringe, slight chance elsewhere. Some models, though, have the showers remaining offshore, so it could be dry. Southerly winds to 30 kilometres per hour, top of 23 in the city, 22 to 24 elsewhere. The sun will rise at 6:17 and ahead. Showers again possible Thursday near the coast, 24 to 25. Mostly sunny Friday, 25 to 27. Sunny and warm Saturday. Easter Sunday forecast to reach 29 to 30. Amy.
Thanks, Tom. That's all from ABC News for now. You can stay across the latest on our website and on the ABC News app. Sarah Ferguson is here now with 7:30.